Hello friends, this is Durga again from IT Varsity, a one-stop shop to learn all the technologies. So as you guys know, this is a big data workshop, and this is currently we are talking about Sqoop, and this is backup for the live audience. Let me set up the WebEx session for the live audience, and then we will take it from there. So let me confirm that people can see my screen. I think it is working fine. So let me make myself as presenter. Okay, so let's get started. At this time we are talking about Sqoop. Yesterday I have covered Sqoop import and all the control arguments for the basic Sqoop import are covered. Now we will continue on talking about Hive import, and then we will see import all tables, and also we'll get started with export, Sqoop export today. So if you go to the Sqoop user guide, we are using 1.4.6. You can go to this documentation. And if you're planning to give the certification, they will provide whatever Sqoop version is tested as part of the certification exam. They will provide the documentation for that, and it looks exactly like this. And here we have covered these things. Okay. Again, you can review if you do not understand any of these things. Let me know. I will cover that. Now, the next important aspect of this is Hive arguments. Okay. So when it comes to typical Sqoop import, we have to give target directory or warehouse directory, which will be pointing to the HDFS directory to get the data into HDFS to that location. When it comes to Hive, as you guys know, Hive table is nothing but a HDFS directory. So the complexity of providing the path is hidden based on the table name you are trying to use. Okay. So that's the only difference, except for storing data into the location which is pointed to the table. Rest of the stuff is same as the typical import. And also, when you create Hive table, and if you try to import into that table, it will override the default delimiters. So, for example, right, if you just do Sqoop import into a typical HDFS directory, it always uses comma as field delimiter. But when you create a Hive table with whatever delimiter you use or whatever file format you use, as long as it can be integrated with Sqoop, it will apply the necessary transformation before loading into the Hive table. Okay, the data will not be comma delimited if the table is table in Hive table created in Hive use the default delimiter. It is you don't need to worry too much about it. But if you let us try it. Let me run few commands here, and then we will validate. So I'm logging into the cluster. Okay, so before starting the Hive import, make sure you use your own database. Don't use the default database of Hive. It will cause unnecessary contention between you and the other guys who are trying to access the lab. It is a shared environment. To avoid all confusion, try to use your own database. For that reason, I am trying to create Hive database. Using Hive-e, we can just create the database and we can come out of it by name D. Gadiraju Sqoop import, SI for Sqoop import, or I will use the database name like this. Okay. You can give whatever name you want, but try to use your OS ID as prefix, because if we have to clean up later, it will be easier for us to write the script and clean up the unnecessary users. Anyway, we might clean up these databases anytime in Hive, so make sure you have the backup to this data. Okay, and here now the database is created, and the simple way of doing the Sqoop import starts with connect. You can use JDBC, MySQL. In this case, we are trying to connect to MySQL database. C306 is the port number, and database name is retail_db. Username retail_dba. Password IT varsity, and then table, whatever table you want to create. In this case, I want to create orders table. Okay, and then to make it as Hive import, you just have to say --Hive import like this, and it will be considered it as Hive import. If the table does not exist, it will create the table. If the table does exist, it will just copy the data into the table. Okay, and then we have to specify the database. If you do not specify the database, it will try to copy into the default database, which we don't need. For that reason, we can say Hive database. I think this Hive database parameter is not documented here. Here you can see it's undocumented, but it is there. Hive database is there. Okay, I don't know which version they have started. But 1.4.1.4.6 have it. If Hive database does not work at the time of certification, what you have to do is, instead of saying Hive database, say Hive table and give the database name. In this case, Gadiraju SI dot whatever table name you want to use to create. If you just say Hive database, and if you do not specify Hive table option, it will try to use this database, and table name will be whatever table we are trying to copy. Okay, that will be the default. But if you want to override, you can use Hive table anytime. If Hive database does not work in any of these versions, because it's undocumented parameter, so it might work in some versions, it might not work in some versions. In for any reason, if Hive database does not work at the time of Sqoop import, just use Hive table. If you want to use the same table name, you can give the table name, but you can prefix with the database name dot. Okay, so here I am giving Hive database as Gadiraju SI. So the way it connects to the source database and get the data using splits will be same. While the only difference will be while writing the data. So yesterday I mentioned to not to use your home directory as the direct location for your Sqoop import. The reason is, when you do Hive import, first it will copy the data into your home directory, and then from there it will move the files into the Hive table. So for that reason, if you have imported this order to the home directory like this, it will fail. So in this case, what you have to do, Hadoop SS-rm. I have to clean up this one. Typically, we will not use our OS users with the names like this. You will have a project related user, okay, and within that, for each module, you will have subdirectories. We will never save our data directly in the home directory. That is not a good practice. Even with the functional user, you should never save data directly under the home directory. You have to define uh, the directory structure using some better practices, and you have to define the technical spec, and you have to adhere to that technical spec while creating the directory structures. Okay, typically in um, uh, environments where the development guidelines are followed with the best practices, you will not run into these issues. Okay, but while exploring, these are the common issues which you will encounter. Now, if I run Sqoop import, and let's see what it will do. It is trying to get the data using the same logic as split size. Now, data will be copied to that location. The location is /user/d Gadiraju, which is my home directory, and then the directory with the table name. Once that is done, so that is done up to at this time. If you check the /user/d Gadiraju, there will be a directory by name orders over there. After that, what it will do, it is actually copying the data from that location into the location where the table is pointing to. Okay, now if I check Hadoop fs-ls, even though it uses that location internally, that orders location under this home directory, you will not see it now because it will clean it up. It will just move the data from the stage location into the Hive table, and that will be taken care somewhere here. Okay, so sometimes what will happen is the job might fail between this and this. What will happen if the job fail between this up to this? The directory will not be deleted. So when you rerun again, it will complain that directory already exists. So you have to delete that. That is one of the most common issue which you will see in Sqoop with Hive import. Okay. So now let us go to the Hive and validate that we got the data properly. So there is one question from Himanshu. Meanwhile, let me take that one. So Himanshu, the database name which is mentioned in the URL is MySQL database, and the database name which is mentioned outside URL is Hive database. So both are different. So here you can see the table orders, and then if you do describe formatted orders and hit enter, you can see it is using Hive default delimiter. It is not using the Sqoop default delimiter. Internally, even though it's a Sqoop import, it is using the Hive default delimiter, and the data will be also copied with the Hive default delimiter only. That you can validate by running this command: select star from orders limit 10 and hit enter. And now the data is appropriately queried. Sometimes what happens is, as long as you do it as Hive import into this table, whatever Sqoop know the structure of the table, and it try to apply the transformation to satisfy the structure of the table. Sometimes some people, what they do, instead of doing the Hive import into that location, they do typical import by giving HDFS directory. So for example, I'm truncating this table. Truncate table orders. Now there is no data in this table. Now if I run describe formatted orders, This is the HDFS path. We can specify target directory to this, and we can run the Hive import in typical manner. Sorry, Sqoop import in typical manner. So we can run like this: Sqoop import. Okay, so here you can say, instead of this location, you can give location like this. Okay, and we are also saying we are not specifying the delimiter. If you say as our data file, data will be copied as our data file, but our file table is using text format by default. It will be out of sync. Sqoop import will be successful, but when you try to query the table, query from the table, you will run into some issues. I am removing this as our data file and copying it as text itself. So what is happening? Sqoop import is running with default delimiter, which is comma for text file input format, and our Hive table is created using control A as the delimiter. Now, if I run this command, import will be successful, but when we log into Hive, or when we launch Hive, and when we try to query the data from the table, you will see inconsistent results or incorrect results. Okay, so you need to be very careful to understand how the integration should happen. As long as you do Hive import, you are good to go. It will try to understand the underlying structure of the table. If Sqoop can support that structure, it will work. If Sqoop cannot support the structure, it will complain saying class not found or some kind of error, which will clearly say that Sqoop is not able to write in the format where Hive can accept it. Okay, but if you do typical import like this, pointing to the Hive table location, whether it is external table or managed table, then you need to do some extra additional diligence. So here I am launching Hive. Now it is not even returning the data. Okay, because the metadata and the table are completely out of sync. So to copy data into the Hive tables, you should always use Hive import. Don't ever use typical Sqoop import. Okay, now let us review the other parameters. Hive import is the one which will actually create the table for you. And then there is a very misleading argument called create Hive table. If set, what will happen is, if there is a table already, then it will fail. It's completely misleading argument. So right now we have the orders table already, right? So let us try to do the Sqoop Hive import itself. Sqoop Hive import. Okay, here I am saying create Hive table. So Hive import itself makes sure that table is created if the table does not exist. If the table exists, it will just copy the data. By adding create Hive table, if the table does not exist, it will create the table. If the table already exists, it will fail saying that table already exists. I don't know why they have used such kind of name, which is completely misleading. See here, it says table already exists. Okay, now if I query that location Hadoop ss-ls user, you will see that orders directory because it failed after staging the data while copying into Hive table. Okay, now if we have to run the Sqoop import again, we have to delete the directory. Probably, if I say delete target directory, it might work. Let me try. That's what delete target directory itself is to override. So it will just delete the directory and it will copy the data. So Hive overwrite, it will work. If you use Hive overwrite, it will work. Okay, so the purpose of Hive overwrite is if the table already exists, you just overwrite it. Create Hive table is different. Create Hive table is if the table does not exist, it will create the table. If the table does exist, it will complain. Okay, Hive overwrite is if the table exists, it will just overwrite. Otherwise, by default, it will append. So create Hive table is very misleading. So be careful with that create Hive table argument. Hive import itself makes sure the table is created. Create Hive table only does the additional check to see if the table is already created or not. If the table already created, it will just complain that table already exists. Okay, now I think if you remove create Hive table here, this time it will run. Even though that orders directory is there, because we have this delete target directory, it will delete the directory and it will copy the data. Okay, now it is running in the append mode. So if there is data already, it will try to have additional copy of data. Now it ran successfully. Even though the previous jobs failed and we have that staging directory because we have delete target directory control argument, it deleted the staging directory before starting the job and it proceeded. So now if you run Hadoop ss-ls, yes, yeah, number of files are 8 because already there are 4 files. Now it has added 4 more files. Hive warehouse orders. You can not, there are only 4. Okay. Okay. Previously okay, I know what the reason. The reason is when I run with this complete path, I have given warehouse directory, not the target directory. That's why we didn't see the data appropriately. Now let me run it again, okay? I'm doing the typical import with the target directory, not the warehouse directory. Okay, so it will clean up the orders completely, everything will be gone. And then it will try to load the data, and then we will see whether orders, by running the query, whether we will be able to get the data or not. We will see the behavior. So once again, I am recollecting. Our table is created with the null character or control a character of the delimiter, and we are doing typical Sqoop import by pointing to the HDFS location of the table. And now I'm launching Hive. I should not have used it. Far from others. The reason why we are getting nulls is the structure of the table uh, and the data is different. Okay, the first column is the integer, whereas the entire line is considered to be string because there is a data type mismatch. Everything is displayed as null. Okay, so that's you have to keep this in mind. If you are trying to do Sqoop typical import into the location where your Hive table is created, your technical specification for the integration of the two has to be inconsistent. Has to be consistent. Okay. So Hive overwrite is to just to overwrite it, otherwise it will try to load the data in append mode. Hive drop import delimiters. So when it comes to these escape characters and all those things, okay, sorry, uh, whatever are typically used as delimiters, if those delimiters are part of your data, if you specify Hive drop import delimiters, it will drop them, or you can also specify delimiters replacement. These are hardly used. We don't use that often. If you want to load data into a partition table, you can actually give the partition key here and partition value. If you want to if you want to load data into a specific partition for a given table, you can specify the partition key and partition value here. Map column Hive or a default mapping from SQL type to Hive type for configured columns. So, for example, so what it is doing when it comes to Hive, creating Hive table, it is actually creating the table, specifying the delimiters and all those things, and then loading data into that, right? In source database, if it is integer, it will try to create with integer on target. If it is date, it will try to create with whatever matching data type in Sqoop, probably date or string. If it is varchar, it will try to create a string. If it is char, it will try to create a string. If you want to override that mapping, if you, for example, if you are using integer on source, and if you want to change it to string for whatever reason on target, you can use this map column Hive. Okay, this is not column mapping. This is column data type mapping between your table in source database, column of the table in source database, and column of the table in Hive. Okay, but we don't use these things that often. Most important ones are these ones. Okay. Now, I will recommend you to create a um, Hive home is instead of so typically we will internal when it comes to distributions, Hive home will be automatically generated. You don't need to worry about it. And the typical location will be, I think, /etc/hive or /var/hive. I do not remember. That is the typical location. If you are setting up Hive in a different location, which is not typical, in that case, if you have to specify your the home directory for the Hive installation, you have to use this Hive home. But you don't need to worry too much about it. In most of the cases, if you know if you know that there is Hive, and if it is not working, then you need to get the directory under which Hive is installed, and you have to pass that to the Hive home. Okay. So now I will give you an exercise. I will give 10 minutes time. What you have to do is just import or create a database for yourself in Hive and import all the 6 tables into the database. Okay, and if you want, you can actually use this different file format like Avro or Parquet or sequence file, whatever it is. You can give it a try. Sometimes other file formats you might run into issues. At that time, you have to troubleshoot and you have to get a fix for it. If you are interested, you can use compression also while loading the data. Okay, make sure you create a database and use Hive database argument to copy data to create the tables in that Hive database. And also, even though they did not differentiate between parameters related to source system and the target system, you should be able to figure out Okay, let me explain. Let me take a couple of minutes here and explain this important aspect. If you look into this, they are scattered and they did not specify whether it is target related argument or source related argument. But you should be able to figure out all these five. Do you think are source related or target related in Sqoop import? These are all target related. We are trying to control what should happen in Hive. Do we need to append the data into the Hive direct? Sorry, not Hive, Hadoop. Okay. Do we want to import, uh, uh, append into the Hadoop directory or HDFS directory, or do you want to overwrite? Those are controlled by these parameters. Boundary query. This is primarily to set the boundary while reading data from the source. So this is source related. Columns. This is to control what columns should be fetched from the source. Again, it's source related. Delete target directory. It itself have target, so it is kind of target directory. Direct is again to do the direct path read from the source table. So it's again source. Fetch size is also source. Inline lob limit, it's target. Num mappers, it is both source and target because it controls how many threads should be used to read and how many files should be created. Okay. Query, its source. Split by, its source. Auto reset to one mapper, its source. Table, this is source related. Target data and warehouse data are target related. Where condition, it's source related. Compress, compression codec. We are trying to compress the data while the data is being written to target. So it's target related. Null string and null non-string are again to represent nulls in the target. So they are target related. So typically, when we try to perform Hive import, most of the parameters will overwrite. Means what I'm trying to say is when it comes to Hive import, all these are target related only. There is no source related. Okay. Whatever we have seen as source related parameters as part of the explanation, you can use all those parameters along with Hive import to control how the data has to be fetched from the source and written into Hive. Okay, most of these are actually alternatives for typical import from Hive perspective. Only difference is here you are trying to load the data into Hive table, there you are trying to load into HDFS directory. But your source parameters will remain same. Okay, you can apply where condition, you can apply columns, you can use query to query the data, to import the query results, etc. You should be able to identify what is source related parameter and what is target related parameter or control argument. Now I will give 10 minutes time. It's 3:10. I will give up to 3:20. You just create the database and perform the import.
Do we need to import anything before
What's that?
maybe it is saying giving a warning? Accumular does
You don't need to worry about it. I think it's some dependency for some special types. So that warning is quite common. I didn't set up with the cumulog when I set up the cluster.
if you do database also you write to the database with the name and your first name.
I didn't get it. What is it?
This department database.
Yeah.
So it should do everything.
Yeah. So
So it's not showing, but I will import is successful. Sqoop import is successful. It is not showing data.
because you didn't specify Hive import, you have to specify Hive import. If you don't specify,
You can just copy to
uh,
here.
I think it will copy to the.
It is creating in my home directory.
Okay. That's it. It did not. Okay. It should have thrown an exception actually. So what Abhishek have done is without specifying Hive import, he just specified Hive database. And what it have done, it copied data to his home directory, which is /user / his OS ID. It did not get into the database. It neither create the table, it nor thrown the exception. So a couple of more minutes, then we'll get into the next topic called import all tables. So Himanshu is asking, if I try to import the same table again, then will the records get appended? Yes, by default it will append. If you want to overwrite, you have to use the Hive overwrite. Okay, so let us get started with import all tables. I will give you time sometime later again. If you want, you can resume over at that time. Okay, and also we need to understand incremental load. HBase is out of scope, so I'm not covering HBase. Okay, so now there is another option when it comes to import. It's a separate command in itself. It's import all tables. So when you will use it, if you want to import all the tables, you can use import all tables. And if you go to the syntax, the common arguments are same as we have seen with import, eval, list databases, list tables, etc. But control arguments, there is no append. Okay, there are these four. I think, uh, yeah. So you cannot actually rerun import all tables again if the directory already exists. If the tables already exist, it will just fail saying that directory already exists. Okay, and file formats are all supported. Whatever file formats are supported in import, they are supported in import all tables also. Direct is supported. If you see, the options are very few. Okay, and what are the options that are missing? There is no query, there is no table, because it's import all tables. That's why table does not matter. You can queries to again fetch one result set. Here we are trying to import everything, so query is also not there. There is no boundary condition, boundary query. The reason is, for each table, the primary key column can be different, so you cannot hard code your boundary values. So there is no boundary query. There is no where, because each table can have different column names. If you try to apply where condition, it will try to use it on all the tables, which might not be practical. That's why where is not supported. So wherever you are trying to apply transformations, such as filtering, row level transformations, etc., those things are not available here. It's only import all tables. You cannot specify individual table. So number of mappers is by default 4. If you want to override, you can specify -m or --num mappers. In this case, we can only give warehouse directory. We cannot give target directory. So warehouse directory will be the base directory for your data. And for each table, it will create a subdirectory with the table name. Okay, that is warehouse directory. And if you want compression, you can do the compression. All the tables will be compressed. And then out of, let's say you have hundreds of tables, and there are few workflow tables which are not relevant to perform processing in Hadoop, and you don't want to import those things. Then you can specify exclude tables, and you can exclude those things. And then out of the tables, some tables might have primary key, some tables might not have primary key. Wherever you don't have primary key, if you just want to reset the number of mappers to 1, and for others, you give whatever value you want as part of num mappers, you can use this option called auto reset to 1 mapper. Okay, so if you have bunch of tables, and if the table does not have primary key, if one of the table does not have primary key, and if you don't use auto reset to 1 mapper, what will happen? It will, when you run import all tables, it will try to import one table at a time. Okay, so when you and each table will be applied with that num mappers 4. So if one of the table throw any exception for whatever reason, your import will neither be done completely nor will be rolled back. You will be in inconsistent state. So you have to do the cleanup, and then you have to rerun the import all tables again. Okay, so that is about Sqoop import, and also it gives these additional options to format the output, which we have seen earlier also, like enclosed by, escaped by, fields terminated by, lines terminated by, etc. And then you have Hive arguments. When it comes to Hive arguments, this is not correct. You cannot actually specify Hive table in import all tables. It is not correct. You can give it a try, it will fail. It's a bug. It's a documentation bug. Yeah, you can specify Hive database. You cannot specify partition key. You cannot specify partition value. You cannot specify. Probably you might be able to specify map column Hive, but not these things, because each table might be partitioned in a different manner. Okay, this is documentation bug. Okay, so that is about import all tables. Let me run it, and then I will give you time. Even if you fail to import previously into Hive tables, you can do it now using one command, import all tables, rather than importing one one after the other. Okay, so I'm coming out of this. Before coming out of this, I'm dropping the existing tables. If I want, I can also say exclude tables, and then or when you try to import all tables, you can say exclude tables to exclude the tables which are already imported. Okay, I dropped it. I just want to run so that you understand how it actually runs. So the syntax is import all tables hyphen hyphen connect jdbc mysql forward slash underscore db username password, then you can say Hive database, and we have to use Hive import, and only it will be running as Hive import. And if you want to set auto reset, in this case all the tables have primary key. I'm trying to use number of mappers as 2, and also if you want to auto reset, typically we use auto reset for import all tables. Yes, it will fail. Yeah, it will fail. Auto reset to mapper. That's it. Now what it is doing, it has queried the tables in the ascending order by name. So we have 6 tables: categories, departments, orders, order items, products, and customers. Okay, so it will actually fetch the tables in the order of the names of the tables. First it will fetch categories, then customers, then departments, then orders, order items, and products. Okay, now categories is done. Now it will fetch the next table. So it is same as running 6 Hive import commands with the 6 different table names. Okay, but as we are trying to use a generalized command, our options are a little bit limited. Okay, that's it. There is nothing much to explain for import all tables. You just need to understand those all the arguments you have. As we are doing the Hive import, in parallel we can launch Hive on this node in a separate session. Four tables. Select star from categories just to validate we got the data properly. Okay. So it is being loaded. Now I will give time again to you to import all the tables. You can then import all tables, exclude the tables which you have already imported, and finish off so that you have all the 6 tables. So let me give the syntax for you. So 4 more minutes because you should at least you should just start the import all tables and then we can proceed with the explanation. After this, I will try to cover um, the practicality of using import all tables. Okay, everyone started import all tables. Okay. So now let us understand the practicality of using import all tables. I don't know why they actually implemented import all tables. It is not so practical in many times, because when you try to import the tables, your tables will be of different sizes. You cannot use the same number of mappers across all the tables. Okay, for some POC purposes, just to get the copy data quickly, probably it might come handy. Other than that, you don't find it so useful. For example, if you, let's say you have 100 tables, and all the tables together can be 200 GB. Let's say approximately around 200 GB, or let's say even 1 terabyte or 2 terabytes. Out of these 100 tables, 10 tables will have the majority of the data. Other tables will not have so much of data, and there will be plenty of smaller tables. To copy very big tables, 4 or 8 or 16 will not be enough. You have to do the due diligence, and depending upon the table size and whether there are indexes or not, you have to do a lot of research, and then based on that you have to come up with the appropriate number of mappers. Okay, with the small tables, one is more than enough. Even whether there is a primary key or not, one is more than enough. So in reality, when you see the actual reality, when you try to implement the data integration in the actual production scenarios, for each table you might have to give a different value to import. Okay, that is one caveat, one disadvantage. And the other disadvantage is it can only use it for the baseline, because there are no wear condition, there is no incremental load. There are so many options missing when it comes to import all tables. So only for baseline you can use it. Okay, and one more thing is, one more disadvantage of using import all tables is, if you say number of mappers as 4, for each table it will try to import one table at a time, and for each table it will use 4 different threads. If I would have implemented, the way I would have implemented is, if I say import all tables 16, okay, the engine should be smart enough to use 16 different threads to import the data from multiple tables at the same time, so that we use 16 threads consistently while importing the data into the target. Okay, they don't want to get to up, but it is very complex to implement. That's why they didn't go to that level. So these are the different issues which will limit the usage of import all tables. Okay, and now when it comes to Sqoop again is a command line. It's a tool which have bunch of commands, and using commands alone, you will not be able to develop a application which can run on its own, report any exceptions to the operations team, right? So on top of Sqoop commands, you have to use some programming language to develop a wrapper which will generate the Sqoop commands dynamically based upon certain criteria and issue the commands. And if there are any exceptions, the application should be smart enough to catch those exceptions and then send email to the operations team. You have to develop that entire framework by generating the Sqoop commands on the fly, even if you want to do Sqoop import on regular basis. Okay, to develop applications on the fly, you need to understand how the logs are generated, how you can actually pass through the logs and capture the exceptions and report it to the operations team. So one of the technology typically used with respect to Sqoop is shell scripting. Shell scripting, you can actually automate the entire process. You can have a properties file, and let's say you want to use 4 threads on one table and 8 threads on another table. In the properties file or YML file or something, you can define all those properties at each table level. First load that properties, and then use that properties to dynamically generate the import command for each table, right? And that is how you develop. And also, you should understand how the logs are being generated. So when you run the sqoop command, so in this case, let me run the sqoop import on the orders table once again. Okay. If I run this command, it generates the log, and log is generated as part of the standard out. It is not written to anywhere. Unlike Hive, the logs will be written to, by default, written to /tmp/hive.log. If you want to overwrite, there are certain log4j.properties which you need to overwrite at runtime, and it will be written to a different file, whatever file and directory you have given. But when it comes to sqoop, it will just emit the log into the standard out. So even though you get all the logs here, there is certain information it has passed as standard error, and there is certain information which it got from the standard out. And if you know the codes for the standard in, standard out, and standard error, the codes are 0, 1, and 2. If you want to capture the error, what is the code for error? It's 2. Okay, so for any exceptions and for any information that is required for the logging purposes, you have to redirect to a file. For standard out, you can say 1, and you can redirect that one to a file. So now I am running this sqoop import again and trying to write the error to or the log information to a file called job details.log. Okay, and then 1 to job details.out, or we can also say .error and .out, just to confirm that we are trying to redirect standard error to this file. Okay, so if you use only one greater than, it will always create a new file with that name and write the logs to that logs are out, error are out to those files. If you say double greater than, if the file already exists, it will keep on appending to that existing file. Okay, now hit enter. And these are the things which are very important and which are not documented as part of the programming sqoop user guide and all. Okay. Now you see the details are not displayed on the standard because we are actually redirecting to files. If you want to redirect as to the file, and also to if you want to display here, you have to say 2 greater than &1 and then greater than job details.f, so that it will be displayed here, and also it will be written to the file system. Okay, and now you see job details.f have the counters information, all the logs related to info, warning, etc. And then job details.out have only this warning. Okay, other than that, it does not have anything. So what you have to do for each job, you have to redirect to a log file. You have to pass that log file and integrate with Unix or Linux based mail software such as SendMail, and you should use send email to the operations team in case of any exceptions, in case you want to develop with shell scripting. Okay, so you need to know shell scripting if you have to develop data integration framework using Sqoop. You can do it with Python, you can do with any scripting language. It's not only shell scripting, but you should know one shell scripting. People use Java also, but with Java it is a lot more complicated. For these things, you should consider Python or Ruby or shell scripting. You should not go to Java. Okay. Now, the next important aspect for the Sqoop import is incremental load. So now I'm going back to the Sqoop import again. I have covered import, control arguments, Hive arguments, and then I have covered import all tables, control arguments, and Hive arguments. Now there is a separate section in import itself, which is called as incremental load. Okay, so again, this is I don't like it. I don't use it that often. There are few advantages of using this incremental load, incremental import. It stores the information about what is being imported into some internal tables or internal file structures, and it will try to get that information for the subsequent runs if you run it as Sqoop job. Okay, but anyway, we will come back to that again. So typically, how will we do incremental import? Um, uh, if you think about the data integration, there will be a baseline, and at regular intervals, depending upon your report or data processing SLS, you have to capture the delta. Okay, so capturing delta is called as incremental load. After the baseline, all the subsequent runs are called as incremental load. Okay, if you go to the control arguments, you have the options such as query instead of table, and you can put whatever you want in the query. And also, even with the table, there is the option of where. Okay, in where you can have the valid column names and conditions along that on top of that column. So you can use table and where combination also to perform the incremental load by applying the condition. But to get this incremental load, your database, your data model, your existing data model should capable to provide a way to identify the delta. What are required to identify the delta? Typically, in most of the well-designed data models, you will have a field called update time, creator update time. Okay, that update time will have either timestamp or date and time. Timestamp in the sense with milliseconds or at least up to seconds. So using that update time, you can identify what all records that are inserted or updated beyond certain point in time. Okay, so to capture beyond the certain point in time, you should know that certain point in time which is already imported. For example, today is 6th of April. Let's say 5th of April. Let's say we took the baseline on 4th of April, and we want to capture delta once every day. So when we run on 5th, we got the data. We should be able to identify that we have captured data up to 4th of April. When we run the subsequent job on 6th of April morning, we should try to fetch the data for the 5th of April. For that, there should be a column in the table. And also, you should have the information that you have already imported till 4th of April. Only then you will be able to do the incremental load. So the most important aspect when it comes to incremental load is, as with any data integration framework, you should have the log tables or you should have the files which will log this information. Okay, log files or log tables in traditional RDBMS, you should have the information till when you have imported as part of the previous import. Or you can also do it in the file system. It's not required that it has to be table, but tables are more flexible compared to files. So now if we decide to load to save this information about the status of each import into a table, how can we do that? So either we have to write a shell scripting code to connect to the database and update or insert into that log table about whether the import is successful, till what point of time the data is copied and all those things. Or we can also use eval command. Eval command, you can pass any query, insert, update, delete. You can also invoke the stored procedure. Okay, you can pass anything as part of the eval. So one way of doing it is use eval. That way you don't need to write another module where your shell script or any scripting language has to connect to the database. Using Sqoop eval, you can actually, once the import is done, you can identify till what point the data is imported as part of the baseline, and then update the log table. When you run subsequently, what you have to do, first you have to go to the log table, identify till what time or what point data is already copied, and then use that value as part of a where condition to capture the delta. Okay, that is more important. If you can log the information and if you can fetch the information to perform the subsequent Sqoop import, and once the Sqoop import is done, again you have to update that you have copied or you have ran you have done the data copying of the data up to certain point in time. Okay, only then again you can capture the delta on the next day. Okay, so that is very, very important. And again, the complexity is in writing the program, not writing the Sqoop command. Writing Sqoop command, you just have to use where condition of the couple of control arguments which will facilitate you the incremental load. Okay, but the complexity is to query the log table, generate the value to identify the delta, load into the HDFS using Sqoop import. Once that is done, update your log table again to persist till what point data is copied. That is more important than anything else. Is it clear? Now let us see the different aspects of incremental load. One way of doing it, doing the incremental load is you can use where condition. Okay, so these are the things which you need to, which Sqoop will provide you to perform the incremental load. And one more thing which you need to keep in mind is when you try to perform these incremental loads, there can be two types of data, actually three types of data. Data that is inserted, data that is updated, data that is deleted. Okay, so typically when we try to integrate data to the downstream system, we have to the target, the development team of the target application and the owners of the core application from which we are trying to get the data has to sit together, and if required we have to make certain code changes to the source application. We have to negotiate with the source team, and then we need to identify for example, let's say he is the developer of the owner of the core application, and I am the owner of the downstream application. I want to capture the delta. If there is no update timestamp in the table, I have to convince him to make the changes to his code, add that update time so that I can capture the delta. Otherwise, I will not be able to fetch the data, and project will be in jeopardy. So we have to sit together, we have to negotiate, and we have to make certain changes in the source application. So by using update time, we can capture all the changed data. Some things can be inserted, some things can be updated. And in some cases, they also store the latest operation on the record, whether it is insert or update, so that the downstream guys can identify what are the inserted records and what are the updated records as part of the delta they receive. Okay, so when it comes to Hadoop, inserted data will be treated separately. Updated data has to be treated separately. Deleted is a lot more complicated. Okay, if we delete the data, there is no way to capture the data is deleted. So what we do, first we do the soft delete. Soft delete. In case of soft delete, his application should be smart enough to ignore all the even the record will be there in the table, there will be a column which will specify that it is deleted, is deleted or something. And his application should have is deleted condition in all his queries wherever he is trying to fetch the data. And then, or after certain time, he might purge the data. But if we specify is deleted, if there is deleted, I know that okay, this data is soft deleted in the source system. I can identify that data, and eventually I can take care whatever I have to in the downstream system. But if I never receive that information that it is deleted or not, I cannot do anything. So we have to sit together, we have to negotiate, and then only project will move forward. Okay. Anyway, now coming back to so there again now there can be two scenarios where the downstream guys will get the data. One, insert only data. Sometimes in some tables, source systems only insert the data. They never update. If it is just insert only data, I can just append to the existing tables by capturing the delta. There is no complexity at all. Okay, but if the data is inserted as well as updated on the source system, as a downstream guy, first I need to identify. So here we are trying to use it for the analytics purpose, right? Sometimes we might want to have the trail of the operations, even though he have sent me inserted as well as updated the data. If I need to have the trail of the operations on each of the record, I can convert those updates into inserts. Okay, and I can keep on adding the data to the table. What will happen? Let's say there is one record where he inserted once, updated 10 times, and then deleted, soft delete. So in his system, there will be only one record which says the record is deleted in the final operation. But in my system, because I am getting the delta, both inserted, updated, as well as soft deleted, and I am appending to the existing table on the target, I will have 12 records. Okay. There also there is nothing, not much complexity involved. I just have to use either where condition or these incremental arguments, get the data, and append to the existing table. There is no complexity involved in that. But sometimes, for whatever reason, I need to maintain the snapshot as it is in the source system. That means if the data is inserted, it has to be inserted here. If the data is updated, it has to be updated here. If the data is deleted, it has to be deleted here. Okay. If it is a small table, we can just get it overwrite and maintain the snapshot. If it is bigger table, there is a Sqoop merge operation which you can perform. I will not be getting into Sqoop merge here. If you are interested, you can go to my GitHub code, which is D. Gadiraju, and the code is the repository. In that, you can go to Hadoop, EDW, Cloudera, Sqoop, Sqoop demo, and here there is an example of Sqoop merge. Okay, and also there are videos associated with it. You can actually go to ITversity YouTube channel and search for Sqoop merge, and you will get videos associated with it. Okay, so you have to do this to perform the Sqoop merge. Okay, and actually it starts from here. Merge process begins. It is a very lengthy process.
This is not required.
No certification. I don't think they will go till this point. Okay. They might give a small table. You just have to overwrite. That's it, if it is required. Okay. And now let us see these arguments. We can use where condition in most of the cases. Otherwise, if you want to do these incremental import arguments, there are three arguments. One is check column, second one is incremental, Third one is last value. Okay. Check column, you can specify any of these columns. And then incremental, by default, uh, is append. Okay. Yeah, legal values for mode include append and last modified. By default, it's set. 1 minute, let me recollect. So check column, you can specify any column name. Last value, you have to give the last value up to which the data is already imported. So what it will do, it will actually say where the check column which is given greater than this last value. Okay. And if it is date, then you have to use last modified. If the source column which you have defined as part of check column is date, then you have to use last modified. Otherwise, you can use append. So typically, append will be used for the insert only type of operation. So it will always get the data and it will load the data into this table. Even last modified also, it is typically you will get the data and you will just load into the target table. Okay, so there is nothing different than where condition. Actually, using where is a lot more flexible to you. You can even specify the upper condition, upper cap. You can implement functions on the where clause. It gives a lot more flexibility. But if you just want to generate that where condition automatically, you can use these control arguments. I never prefer to use these things. I prefer where condition always. Okay, so you can either use where condition or these three arguments to perform the incremental load. And then depending upon whether you are trying to get the insert only data, data which needs to be only appended to the existing one, you just run the Sqoop import command. If you have to update on the target system, there is an update operation in Hadoop or Hive or Sqoop. You have to run that Sqoop merge command. Sqoop merge command, what it will do is it will actually take 2 copies of data and then identify which is already there in both, which is there only in each of them, and it will try to capture everything together and try to merge both the data sets. That is what Sqoop merge will do. And it is, even though it says Sqoop merge command, it uses map reduce. Both the datasets have to be in HDFS and both the datasets will be merged. You can watch the video and it will clarify. Okay, that concludes the Sqoop import. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll move on to Sqoop export. And one more thing I will highly recommend is you should practice these arguments, fields terminated by, especially this one, fields terminated by, and specify the character on which you want to delimit your data. Try with pipe, try with comma, try with control a character, all those things. Because in certification, they might ask you to use a particular format, and if it has special characters, you should know how to deal with those special characters. Otherwise, it will be surprise for you. And documentation will not give much of information of dealing with those special characters. Okay. So that being said, now let us get on to the Sqoop export. So when it comes to Sqoop export, the common arguments are same: connect, username, password, etc. And now let us go to the control arguments. And if you see, the control arguments only handful. Compare with the import command have so many options. The main reason, this is very important to listen, the main reason why we have fewer options here compared to Sqoop import is, Sqoop import is trying to connect to your source database where you can issue a SQL query and get the data. So that's why you are flexible to give the column names, where condition, all those things. Okay. Whereas Sqoop export, what is the source for Sqoop export? Data in HDFS location. It does not have, you cannot apply where condition that easily because it deals with files. It will not deal with individual records. Whereas the SQL deal with individual records. Hence, it gives a lot more flexibility for Sqoop import than Sqoop export. So you cannot specify the columns. You cannot specify this columns is a little bit different. Unlike Sqoop import, where it will convert into select column 1, column 2, column 3, it is a little bit different. I will cover that. There is no where condition. There is and uh, there is no file formats here. Okay, all those things which are typically source oriented or target oriented. Now they swap their positions, right? So file formats are HDFS related stuff. Here we are trying to read the data. As long as the files are supported with by Sqoop, it will just read it. You don't need to specify it as Avro file or sequence file or some other file. Similarly, while writing into the database, now it is more write oriented than read oriented. All the read oriented parameters which we have seen earlier will not have much value here. That's why they are all dropped. Now let us go one by one. The simplest Sqoop export will look like this. So for this purpose of testing Sqoop export, we will use this database and connecting to the database using retaildb as usual, diversity.com. And we will use retail_export. Okay, and show tables. There are a bunch of them. We'll use this one to copy the data. Okay, so the simplest Sqoop export will look like this. Sqoop export. Connect is same. So here this will be used as target. Still it uses the JDBC connection. Okay, but instead of issuing select query, now it will start issuing insert commands to load data into this for the data that is being read from the HDFS. Retail_export, and then username retail_dba, password ITversity, and now the table which you are giving here is MySQL table to which data will be copied. So to use it, you have to have the table already. Otherwise, you will not be able to copy the data. So let me try to copy it to. Let me create a table here. Okay, use retail export, create table, orders, the WLabs, which is wavelabs, order ID integer. Again, you need to do the necessary mapping between the data which you are trying to copy and the while creating the table and the table in the database. Order, date, let us store it as date, order, customer. Let me do this customer ID, int, order, status, varchar, let us say 30. Okay, now the table is created. So this table has to be this one. It's the MySQL table. Okay. After the table, now we have to specify the directory from which we have to copy the data. So instead of using target directory or warehouse directory where we are trying to write, here we say export directory. Whether it is a Hive table or regular HDFS directory, in both the cases we have to use export directory only. Okay. And here I am specifying the table name, which is in Hive database apps warehouse. Apps Hive warehouse.
Use from our local.
Yeah, you can do what. That's what you can give any HDFS location where you have access to.
I'm asking about local file system.
No, you cannot do that. I think if you actually run Sqoop in local mode, which means you can actually have Hadoop binaries pointing to your local file system. In that case, you can do that, but it's on the cluster it is a little bit tough to demonstrate. If you set up Hadoop on your PC and also set up Sqoop on your PC, you will be giving the local file system only, but internally it will read it as a HDFS file system because of the binaries you have. Okay, .db, and here orders is the table name, and hit enter. So this is the simplest export command. And you have to give both table as well as the export directory. Okay, and if you look at the execution lifecycle, it is being executed. Here also it is running this command select star from table name limit 1. This is to get the metadata of your table so that it creates that Java bean, and it uses that now to feed the data from HDFS through that Java bean class and generate the necessary insert commands to load into the target table. Okay, now the data is copied. Now we need to understand how the split happens. Okay, so earlier it uses that min boundary values query. Okay, we will see that. I will go back to that. Okay, so earlier what have happened? We actually gave uh, the table in MySQL as the source to copy data into HDFS using Sqoop import. Because it is in MySQL table, it is very tough for Sqoop to distribute the data as evenly as possible using multiple threads. For that reason, what we have done, it has an intermediate step which will generate the boundary values query with min and max on primary key column, and using that it computes the split. Whereas when it comes to HDFS have block size, so the data is typically distributed on the cluster. Okay, so it uses the HDFS feature of split to divide the data. In this case, our orders is very small table, but still it is using a number of splits as 4. So what it will do, it will actually, if the file is 128 MB, each thread will try to process 32 MB of data. If it is only 10 MB, each thread will try to process 2.5 MB of data. This is possible because of that additional layer between block size and the processing called split size. So your split size will change based upon the number of threads you are trying to run. So if you go to this URL, okay, and if you go to the configuration, you can search for split. . See here, it is saying file input map reduce input file input format dot split dot min size as 0. Okay, 1 minute. So that memmappers will actually make sure that it set this parameter called sqoop map reduce export dot map task. So internally it will use this value irrespective of the size of the file. It will actually break into uh, uh, multiple splits. Okay, if you even if it is 1 GB file, if you try to copy 1 GB file with only number of mappers 4, still there will be only 4 threads to process the data. Even though there are 8 blocks, it will only use 4 threads to process the data. If it is very large table, and if you are trying to use only fewer number of threads, then your data locality will be compromised and performance can be slow. Okay, at the same time, if you increase the number of threads to very high value, then your database will be bombarded with multiple connections to load the data into the target table, and there can be issue on the table. So you need to test it thoroughly and make sure you identify the sweet spot to use the number of map tasks as effectively as possible on the cluster. Now the job have failed, and most of the time it will only tell failed from here. And if you want to know the reason for the failure, okay, you have to go through the logs. For that, you have to go to the resource manager web UI like this, go to the respective job and click on the tasks that are failed. So if you go to the overview, you can see this is map only job. There are no reducers associated with it. You can see 1 failed and 3 killed. You have to click on the failed one, okay, and click on logs here and scroll down, and it is throwing exception. The exception is I'm I have specified order date as date, and the default format of MySQL is not in line with the format which is there in the data. That's why it is failing. Okay, probably I might have to use date time rather than date. So let me fix that. Dot table order w labs. In Oracle, date means it actually stores both date and time. It does not store in milliseconds, but up to seconds it will actually store as date itself. I think date time is the rare type which I need to use. Okay, now let me run this again and let us see if it executes. Yeah, now it is exported. It has exported 68,883 records, and the job will be successful now. So this also covers how to troubleshoot in case of there are issues while exporting or importing. The same rule applies with the import also. If the error does not give all the details here, you have to go to the task logs. And also, you can actually say it is running in map reduce. So if you run map reduce list all, It will also list completed jobs. If you want to limit only to your jobs, you can say grep. Okay, and our subsidiary, it is not showing the failed job. Okay, let us see this. So this is the job ID. If you run mapped job, you will get the list of commands that are supported. Okay, you have submit, you have status, you have many other things. Okay, and there is one parameter called logs, and it takes job ID as well as task attempt ID. So in this case, first you can actually say mapped hyphen hyphen status job hyphen status and give this job ID. You have to use job ID, not the application ID. Use this application ID. It could not find. Okay, I think failed one is this. I don't know why it is not able to identify. This is the job ID. Okay, so I think it has given in descending order or some random numbers. Let me see. Yeah, it is completely random. Okay, now if I say status on this, you can see it is failed, and also it has given the task. So if you don't have access to resource manager and if you have to troubleshoot, you can use this mapped command. Okay, mapped job, and you can actually say mapped job hyphen logs, give the job ID, and then give the task ID. And hit enter. That's it. I have given the space already. Task attempt ID. Let me check. Okay, you have to give like this. It would be attempt underscore 0. Now you got the logs, and you can check the exception here also. Okay, so that is how you can you can troubleshoot the issues. That being said, now go back to here and try to understand the other important arguments. Columns. So what is columns is, let's say in this case you have the directory in HDFS with only three fields, and that too, first one is order date, second one is order ID, and third one is order status. There is no order customer ID. But our target table have 4 columns in order in the order of order ID, order status, sorry, order ID, order date, order customer ID, and order status. So when you try to do the export, the 3-column data into 4-column table, and order is also different. In that case, you can specify hyphen columns and tell what all columns you are trying to write data into. Okay, so these columns has to be on the names on your table in MySQL. Okay, so if your original, if the data which is in HDFS is first order date, second order ID, then third order status, you have to give order ID, order date, order ID, order status as part of columns. What will happen is, while generating the insert command for each of the record, it will say insert into table. It will give the column names, order date, order ID, order status, values, and the values will be fetched from your file. Okay, so that's how it will actually try to map the out of structured data between HDFS and MySQL, relational table in the relational database, using this columns control argument. Okay, and then number of mappers. If you want to use more, you can more or less than 4. You have to pass this num mappers. And then if you want to, instead of populating the table directly, if you want to invoke a stored procedure, okay, you can invoke the stored procedure by saying hyphen call, and you should have the mapping between. So if your data have 4 columns, the procedure also has to take 4 parameters, and then whatever logic implemented in the procedure will be executed for that data. Okay. Then if you want to update the data, you have to use this update key and update mode. I will cover all these things tomorrow again. So I will stop here. I will not get into more details because it will take some time to cover all these things. So we'll resume tomorrow on export, and then we'll wrap up tomorrow. It will not take very long time. Tomorrow, probably within first 1 hour, we will be wrapping up the Sqoop also, and I will give some time for you to create some scenarios and try to import export the data, and then we'll conclude mapping the curriculum covered with the certification curriculum. We'll conclude the training, and then day after tomorrow we have this Spark and Scala workshop. On that day I will be covering sorting and ranking, Spark SQL, as well as Spark streaming. Okay, so that being said, I will not be able to take any questions. If there are any questions, we'll see tomorrow. I have to go. I have to go to Secunderabad for Yashoda Hospital. My brother-in-law is admitted now with same problem as my wife. So I have to go and visit him once. So we'll catch up tomorrow. Okay. That being said, thank you very much. And I'm concluding this WebEx session. And those who are on YouTube live, thank you very much for joining the session. And if you need environment to practice whatever I'm covering, you can go to labs.itvarsity.com, and you can go to the plans. These are the plans: $15 for 31 days, $35 for 93 days, and $55 for 185 days. And once you subscribe to the lab, whether you subscribe to the lab or not, if you are practicing following my content, if you have any questions, you can go to discuss.itvarsity.com and start logging the questions, and we will try to respond as quickly as possible. That being said, thank you very much. Bye.